The Persian Empire reached its zenith of strength and influence during Darius the Great's tenure as king of Persia, which lasted for a total of 36 years, commencing in 522 BC and ending in 486 BC. During his reign, Darius was able to reclaim his position as the most powerful military leader in the kingdom. Welcome to the Royalty Stories channel. In addition to this achievement, he was also successful in reorganizing the country's legal and economic structures. With the purpose of extending his empire and annexing new land, Darius conducted military expeditions all across the known globe, including in Greece, Europe, and even the Indus Valley. Not only did Darius reclaim his position as supreme commander of the armed forces, but he also oversaw significant changes to the nation's judicial and economic systems as well as massive building endeavors. In addition to this, Darius returned to the same degree of military prowess he had previously had. Darius rose through the ranks to become a powerful figure during the course of his reign and became more powerful as he progressed. The primary sources that offer us with the most information about his life and the reign that he had are his inscriptions. In addition to that, they provide us the most specific information. The most well-known example of this method is the trilingual inscription that was carved on the Bizan-Behistan rock relief from the hamlet of the same name and from his palace at Persepolis. This relief was brought from the hamlet of the same name. Akkadian or Babylonian Elamite was one of the languages that was used to compose it, along with an outdated form of the Persian language. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote and published a number of reports during his lifetime that focused on his rule. This section includes details from a few of the aforementioned tales. About the year 550 BC is when we first hear of Darius in historical records. He was the eldest son of high states and Rhodogun, as well as the eldest son in the family overall. His father held the position of satrap, which is the Persian word for governor, of Bactria during the reigns of Cyrus the Great, 559 to 530 BC, and Cambyses, 530 to 522 BC, the son of Cyrus the Great. Cambyses ruled during the same time period as his father. The term satrap comes from the Persian language and means governor. Darius served as a spearman in the Dora forest during the time when Cambyses was in power. During this time period, the king traveled with Darius to Egypt as part of an expedition that was led in Egypt by Cambyses between 528 and 525 BC. The king was joined on this trip by Darius. When Cambyses left for Egypt, he delegated the responsibility of managing his land to Ptahsites and gave him the title of curator. When Cambyses I returned to his country after being gone for 7 months, he discovered that he had been unsuccessful in his attempts to retake the throne and become king once again. The phony king's reign was winding down, and there wasn't much time left to do what needed to be done. Phidemia, who was the daughter of Cambyses' uncle Otanes, is the one who, according to Herodotus, uncovered the fact that the monarch is not, in fact, Cambyses' brother. Her father became aware of the reality, and he did not squander any time in gathering together a group of people who were involved in the plot. One of the individuals was named High Darius. According to a number of historical accounts, he killed himself as a consequence of this revelation after coming to the decision that he could not overcome the counterfeit monarch and those who supported him. Although Megabyzus was more in favor of oligarchy as a form of administration, Darius was more of a monarchist when it came to the kind of government that should be used. Herodotus suggests that Darius was dishonest in his relationships with the individuals he encountered. After solidifying his power at home, Darius went out to protect the regions of Egypt that had been invaded by Cambyses in the past. Specifically, he focused on the Western Desert and the Western Desert of Egypt. As a direct consequence of his efforts, in the year 519 BC, he was able to successfully incorporate a substantial chunk of Egypt into his reign. The inscriptions he left behind suggest that he began his invasion of India the next year, in 518 BC, and that he focused his efforts largely on the northern Punjab region. During the reign of Darius, there was a discernible rise in the total number of military campaigns. This was a defining feature of his administration. India was the 20th province of the empire during the time when Herodotus wrote his history, according to Herodotus. About the same time, the Persians were also successful in seizing control of several parts of the Indus Valley. According to Herodotus, the following great military campaign is reported to have taken place in the year 513 BC in the territory that is now known as European Scythia. Historians have put up a number of different hypotheses in an effort to acquire a better understanding of the factors that led to the execution of this campaign, and they have done so by offering a range of alternate interpretations. These interpretations vary from a basic military conquest to a more propagandistic objective of vengeance for a prior struggle that occurred under the reign of Cyrus when the Scythians assaulted avenues of communication. One of the notions that is now embraced by the largest number of people is the concept of military conquest. There is also the possibility that Darius wanted to acquire control of the western areas of Greece and that he used the Scythian War as a means to intimidate the Greeks into submission in order to accomplish this goal. If this was the case, then there is a chance that Darius was able to accomplish what he set out to do and become successful. Throughout the course of the campaign, Darius was faced with obstacles that he had not foreseen, which prevented this from transpiring in accordance with the plans. The Scythian army was successful in evading the Persian army by using feints and retreating to the east, all while inflicting damage on the landscape. This was done despite the fact that they were still wreaking havoc throughout the nation. At the same time as the Scythian army was inflicting havoc across the area, the army of the king pursued the enemy far into Scythian territory, where the king then sent a message to the ruler of the Scythians, encouraging him to either fight or surrender because Idanthus refused to do either. Idanthus was the only enemy leader who did not comply with either demand. In the end, the pursuit was resumed, but, a few weeks later, the expedition was terminated due to the fact that sickness and starvation had taken a significant toll on the Persian army. After coming to a stop on the banks of the Volga River, the march continued in the direction of Thrace, who was on his approach to putting an end to the campaign after realizing that he had no assistance from anyone else. While he was not successful in winning the support of Sparta, he was successful in gaining the aid of Athens and Eretria, both of which sent soldiers and ships. Although he was unsuccessful in gaining the support of Sparta, he was successful in gaining the assistance of Athens and Eretria. Despite all of this, his efforts to secure Sparta's support were ultimately futile. Very quickly, the Athenians started making preparations for war, and they also sent envoys to Sparta to investigate the situation there. Yet, the size of the Greek army was still just 10,000, while the Persian army had a strength of 100,000. Despite the fact that the Greeks had recruited friends, they were still defeated. The Greek generals found themselves in a position in which they were outnumbered, and as a consequence, they were in need of an exceptional plan to cope with the circumstance they found themselves in. But, Multiplies was successful in persuading them that an assault on the enemy from inside the shelter of the city walls would be a bad alternative, and that the most effective approach would be to fight the enemy head-on. They came to an agreement, and it was determined that Multiplies would be the one to take the lead in this endeavor. The two armies were getting closer to one another at a leisurely speed when all of a sudden, the Greeks launched into a full gallop, putting some distance between themselves and the other army. The Persians were taken aback by this unexpected change of events, and before they knew it, they were compelled to engage in full contact, hand-to-hand combat with the enemies they were facing. After a few hours of fighting, the Persian lines began to break apart, and many of the troops began to flee in an effort to seek refuge on the adjacent ships or the neighboring hills. The Greeks made the most of the circumstances they were in order to advance their cause. In comparison, the Persian army lost a total of 6,000 warriors whereas the Greek army only sustained the loss of around 200 soldiers. The marble blocks that the Persians intended to use for the monument that they were planning to create after the fight were, however, used by the Greeks who were victorious in the battle to construct a memorial for their fallen allies. The Persians had intended to use the marble blocks for the monument that they were planning to create after the fight. After the battle, the Persians sought to construct a monument, and their original design called for them to make use of the marble blocks in their construction. After the conclusion of the fight, the Persians had the intention of erecting a memorial, and their first plan called for them to use the marble blocks in the building of the monument. This blow was seen as an insult by Darius, and as a result, he made the decision to continue the conflict and make ready for another invasion. These areas paid a predetermined tribute. A committee of Darius' trusted officials established an acceptable price to be delivered as a tribute. He referred to this arrangement as the satrap system. He constituted 20 provinces or satrapies and assigned an archon or satrap to each surrounding territory. The administration of the Persian Empire went through many changes and improvements during the reign of Darius. He established 20 provinces or satrapies with an archon or satrap assigned to each neighboring region, and the Persian Empire expanded significantly during Darius' reign. However, this plan was never carried out because he passed away in 486 BC. Darius, in addition to this, has improved the legal framework of the Persian government by using the Code of Hammurabi from Babylonia as a template, and then following some of Hammurabi's laws in their entirety. Given that it was the job of the judges of the empire to guarantee that the law was adhered to across the empire, it was expected of the judges of the empire that they would never transgress the law themselves. Since the seriousness of the crime and the nature of the punishment were bound together, justice was not compromised under this system, despite the fact that the punishments, which included things like amputation and blindness, may look severe to us in our day and age. In the year 218 BC, despite the fact that Darius had passed away, some of the guidelines from the new system were still in place. This suggests that users have a favorable impression of the newly implemented system. When it came to questions of faith, it is common known that Darius was either a devout follower of the Zoroastrian religion or, at the very least, a steadfast believer in the faith. On the other hand, it is not known for certain which of these two descriptors fits Darius the best. When it comes to his way of trading during his era, it is clearly identified by his inscriptions, in which he credits credit for his triumphs to Ahura Mazda, as well as by his judicial system, in which all laws were issued in the name of the Zoroastrian deity. This demonstrates that he lived his life according to the Zoroastrian religion, as it was taught to him. Also, in regions that the Persians ruled, adherents of other faiths were allowed freedom to freely practice their rites so long as they did so in a respectful way and did not cause any disturbances. This was the case even in regions that were under Persian control. In addition to this, the Persians were responsible of administering the economy as well as the many building projects that were taking place at the time. During the time that Darius was king of the Persian Empire, he was in charge of overseeing the completion of a variety of construction projects that were carried out all over the kingdom and were considered to be of enormous scope. These projects included the construction of palaces, temples, roads, and other structures. After erecting a palace complex in the city of Susa, which was situated in the northern part of the city, he quickly established a preference for residing there within the city. The complex of royal structures at Persepolis featured not only the palaces themselves but also a military sector, a treasury, apartments for the king, a guest house, and additional royal houses in addition to the other royal mansions. In addition to this, Darius completed the building work that Cyrus had begun in Passage but had never finished. This work was never completed by Cyrus. In Egypt, he was responsible for the building of a large number of temples as well as the repair of those temples that had been damaged or destroyed in the past. In addition to this, Darius completed the construction work that Cyrus had begun in Passage but had not completed before Darius took over. The impact that existence after death has on our Earth. Despite the fact that he came in second place in the race, Darius had no intention of giving up on his plan to rule all of Greece, even if the race had ended in loss. After 3 years of preparation, during which he was sick, an uprising broke out in Egypt, which only made his situation worse. In the end, Darius was not able to prevail over his condition and passed away as a direct consequence of his ailment. Once he had passed away, his body was interred in a tomb that he had built himself and buried at the Nekhshi Rustam cemetery. With his passing, the power to rule the kingdom was transferred to his eldest son, who had previously been married to Artaxerxes. This was done in line with the customs that were observed by the rulers of Persia at the time. The death of Darius occurred in the year 486 BC, during the month of October. It is widely accepted that the reign of Darius was one of the most important time periods in the chronicles of the history of the Persian Empire. Darius was the ruler throughout this time. His victories on the battlefield resulted in the expansion of Persia's frontiers, and the administrative reforms he executed led to an improvement in the general health of the empire as a whole. A number of the changes that he brought about are still in place today, such as the laws that he established, which serve as the foundation for Iran's contemporary legal system. A couple of the modifications he made to his policies did not meet with the same degree of success in being preserved. It is really appreciated if you could click the like button on the bottom of this page. Thank you very much and see you soon.